I just wanted to go over one more topic for this past week, and that's getting user input. It's not so important to master this because a lot of the ways that user input works in p5.js are not the same way that we'll use it in general web applications, but just it gives an idea of how we could get and use user input a little bit. So there's two main ways that p5.js lets us get user input. One is through the mouse and one is through keys. So the simplest thing is that we can use the pre-built variables that give us the mouse's position, and those are mouse X and mouse Y. And so first let's just move this background up here. And so one thing is that we could obviously just draw something. Let's say we could draw a circle at mouse X, mouse Y, and give it 30, I mean. And so now if I run this, wherever the mouse goes is going to add a circle. If we would have left the background in the draw, then this would just be one circle that would travel around wherever the mouse is. So that's the simplest way to get a little bit of user input, and I'll just show it the other way. So now that circle is just one circle following my mouse because the program is coloring over the screen every frame. But there are also some special functions that come kind of pre-designed with p5.js that let us get these events. And this is the idea that these functions, what they do is they listen for a change in the mouse or in a key, and then they'll react based on that. So we can have certain things happen only when one of those events are triggered, when the user clicks the mouse or drags the mouse or clicks a key on the keyboard or something like that. So let's give you a simple example if we wanted to make a really simple drawing program. So I move the background back up to the setup so that we'll just have like one page. And now I'm going to make a function called, and this is a function that's predefined by p5.js, just like setup and draw, and this is mouse dragged. And this is going to register anytime the mouse is clicked and dragged. And so now if I use that and I do a line, and I want to draw a line from pmouse X, pmouse Y, which means the mouse's previous X and Y position, that's also a variable that's preset by p5.js, to the current mouse X, the current mouse Y. And so now if I run this, when I click on the screen, it will draw only when I'm clicking and moving the mouse. So that's a really simple drawing program that we could do. There's also some other functions. So there's a mouse pressed and a mouse clicked and a mouse released. So mouse pressed is as soon as you press the button, mouse released is when you let go of the button, mouse clicked is when you press and then release the button. So they're pretty similar, but sometimes you might just want one over the other. Again, for what we're doing right now, it's not super important to master all of these different ways of dealing with the mouse, but just understanding this idea that each of these events, when the mouse is pressed, when it's released, those trigger something in the background that we can access, and we can make our program react dynamically to those changes that the user is making. So for example, the simplest thing we could do is we could make that when the mouse is pressed that we change the background. So let's say we just made the background turn red when we press the mouse. So now, there we go. When I press it, it turns red. And if I wanted to go back as soon as I let go of the mouse, I could either just add the background to the draw section so that it's that's the default. Oh, no, that's not going to work. It's always just going right over. It's overriding my mouse press, I guess. But I could use the mouse release function, mouse released. There we go. Yeah, sometimes you have to play around and figure out exactly what's going on under the hood. But yeah, when I click it, it goes red, and when I let go, it goes back to that gray. So that's just something, you know, to show you with that. The same thing, we could have the mouse press draw something. So we could have it draw a circle at mouse X, mouse Y. We'll give it a size of 30. And let's give that some color. And so now, you know, let me just give my canvas a little bit of a background so we can see it better. There we go. So now wherever I click, I'm going to get a green circle, and whenever I drag, I get a line. So if I keep the mouse still and I just click in one place, it only makes a circle. But if I click and move it, I first get that circle, and then I get this the line. So those are some simple mouse click events. And actually, if you want to try something a little, bit more advanced with that, I'll show you an example that I made, which is this garden drawer. So here I made a function that draws a flower and a function that draws grass. They're both a little bit randomized, but that's not so important for this. And so whenever I click somewhere on the screen, I get a flower with some random coloring, and if I drag, I get some grass that draws on there. So that's a pretty fun thing. I did have to add a little bit of optimization, because like if you saw with the circle and the line, when I just wanted to draw a line and drag, I would first get a circle and then get a line. And you see that I don't get that here. I could just draw the grass, and I only get the flower when I am clicking in one place. And so if you see in my mouse clicked function I'm using over here, I added this variable up here to say whether I'm dragging, and it's only going to add the flower if I'm not dragging. So if I didn't move the mouse from its original position when I let go. So, but you know, that's just some optimization. That's not, you don't have to do that. So I'll send you a link to this example if you want to check it out and play with it, or you can try doing something your own that's similar to that. And then one other thing I wanted to show you, let me just go back to this user input thing here, is that there's also similar events for the keyboard just like there are for the mouse. So if I get rid of that, we could, let's say, have some text, not in here. We could have some text. So let's say I'll put this background back in the draw function, and let's make the text black, which is also uses the fill function, and let's make the text a little bit, let's give it a little bit bigger size, so text size 24, and so we can use text to display text, and here you could just put, let's say, a word if you wanted to, and you could display it on the screen. So right now it's just going to display the static word that I hard-coded in, which is hello. But I could make this a little bit more reactive by putting in key, which is going to now put in whatever key that I pressed in here. So you just have to click on the window so that it will react to your keyboard and know that you're typing in here and not typing in your editor. So if you click on that, and then whatever letter I type is going to show up over there. And if I wanted to make it be a word, so I could make a variable up here called word, and then I could use the function key pressed. So that's similar to like mouse press, but this is listening for keyboard events. And I'm going to change this to print the word. I'm going to give the word, start off as an empty string. And now when I'll add to the key press function that word plus equals key. So now anytime I press a key, it's going to add that letter to my word. So let's see how this works. Again, I have to click on the screen to activate it. I can go hello world. Now one thing that's kind of weird about just doing this is that special characters like backspace or shift are going to show up as the name. So it's going to actually write shift. So to fix that, I would have to, there's some different ways that you could fix that. There's regular keys, and then there's what's called coded keys. So you could say that you don't want the coded keys, but I'm not going to really spend time getting into that because we're not building like Word software in processing. You can look at the documentation and different examples online if you wanted to do something more interesting with words in here. But just the idea of realizing I can get this user input, I can play around with it, and then that's going to be something that we're going to do when we go back to our web applications. So I hope that's helpful, and again, I'll give you some practice assignments to practice all of these skills. All the best.